Hello, everybody. Welcome to Game with Love, place for all games and all people. Today, we're not talking about games. We're talking about Avatar, my favorite show of all time. Just finished it for like the 7th time with my partner, and I figured it's time to do a tier list of where I rank each chapter in each book. And we're going to start from the top. I took the liberty of getting rid of the D and E tiers because I do not believe any Avatar episodes are that bad. I think the lowest is a C, and there might be 2 or 3 episodes in the C list. But we'll see as I kind of relive them going through these where I rank them. And we'll start with chapter 1, The Boy in the Iceberg. This for me it might be lower S tier, but it's definitely S tier. It kind of has to be S tier just by virtue of being the first episode and starting the journey. We also just get really good character introductions. We get to learn how Aang is goofy, innocent, but scared of being the Avatar. We get to see Katara's motherly instincts and her beginning of her waterbending journey. We get to see Sokka immediately be hungry and comedic and also kind of sexist, but we'll see that change quickly. We get to see Zuko be driven and angry, and Iroh be his wise, caring best friend uncle. And I just think it's really good introduction to all the characters. And it ends with a good cliffhanger of Zuko seeing Aang in the distance and heading off to try and take him down. Have I seen the movie? Yeah. That's the only thing. Avatar movie is the only thing I'd rate higher than the show, you know? M. Night Shyamalan, he just does it for me. Chapter 2. I'd say high A tier. This is kind of like a companion piece to the first episode. They do very much act as one long episode with the cliffhanger at the beginning of the first one. This is actually, it's weird. This is the first time you see Sokka not be goofy. Like, you'd think it would come much later, but he puts on the war paint, and like you get to actually see that he's more in depth than just a comic relief character. Like, he cares about his people, and he like is fearless to a fault. Like, he stands in front of Zuko's ship about to get hit. Katara has to like tell him to move out of the way. Like, he definitely has a lot more going for him than just comedy relief. And I just think another just great episode. You get to see Sokka and Katara like change their mind on Aang, and it's kind of the start of the journey. And you also get to see Aang's first real airbending, and you get to see how different all of the bendings are. Like, you get to see Aang fighting Zuko and basically using him as a mirror, like just like standing behind him and like mimicking him to like avoid his attacks. Like, you can see airbending's all about like redirection and stuff. And you get to see Aang slam Zuko with the, which is like my favorite part of the episode. He like slams him with the bed cushion into the wall and then into the ceiling and then just leaves. And I love that. It also like just builds upon what we learned about them in the first episode. Like, Zuko is so driven to capture the Avatar that he literally leaps off of the top of the boat, probably almost to his death if he didn't grab Aang's leg to try and stop him. Like, it definitely is a very good episode. Sokka is my personal favorite character. I always relate the most to characters without powers. Yeah, I mean, Zuko is obviously my favorite character, hence my dog. But like, it's hard to rate them because Sokka is also so good. Like, and it's interesting on this rewatch especially is one where I really got to realize how much I actually care about Sokka and how in depth he is and interesting. Comic relief characters exist for a reason. Like, he adds a lot to the show because it goes from emotionally weighty right to a joke by Sokka, and that kind of cuts the tension. And then it works in the opposite too, where Sokka builds up the comedy, and then you don't see the really emotionally poignant moments coming, and then they hit you a lot harder. And then some of them happen with him too, and I just think he's a great character. And we'll see that actually in the next couple episodes here. But yeah, I would say chapter 2 is high A tier. Southern Air Temple, another great episode, another episode where I cry, so you can mark that down. This is where Aang goes back to the air temple that he grew up in. You get to see Monk Gyatso, who helped raise Aang and teach him the ways of the airbenders, the air nomads. And it's just very devastating for Aang to have to, see everything that's happened to the air nomad temple and the air nomad people. and realize that he's all alone in this journey. Man, this is I think this is the highest of A tier. It might be low S tier because there's a lot that happens in this episode. You meet Momo for the first time, which is big. Oh no, I'm actually gonna change it to low S tier. Because you also have the first Agni Kai between Zuko and Zhao, and that is such a good moment with a great song. It really showcases the animation, and then you also kind of get an introduction to how the Avatar state works and how Aang has his past lives and when those will come back. I think it's great. It's also crazy that the kids show starts talking about war crimes. Yeah, like the themes in the show are so good. Some really heavy stuff early on, and they don't beat you over the head with it. But yeah, it's like the Fire Nation literally murdered a whole peoples. I think it deserves S tier. We also get like flashbacks to what the temple looked like before the Fire Nation wiped it out, and I think Gyatso is a great character. You can see where Aang gets his goofiness. Yep. Moving on. Kyoshi Island. This is another one that's hard not to put. I think I'm gonna put this one high A tier, just because it doesn't have the emotional weight of the Southern Air Temple. It's hard to ignore all the memes that this episode brings up. You got mouth foam guy. You got Aang doing the marble trick for the first time. You got Aang trying to impress all the girls doing push-ups with just his mouth. And then you also have the introduction to Kyoshi Warriors and Kyoshi, and I think they're great. You have first peek at characters that'll actually learn lessons and grow with Sokka. The first episode shows him kind of being a little sexist towards his sister, and then in this episode he does it again to the Kyoshi Warriors, and he literally, like, by the end of the episode is like, I was wrong, I apologize, like, I want to be better, which is amazing. Like 4 episodes in and you're like, holy shit, these characters actually care about growing as people, and it's real good. Aang and the Yonagi, and just a really good fight at the end between Zuko and the Kyoshi Warriors and Aang, and it's a great episode. Top of A tier. Moving on to chapter 5. Another one that's got to be, I think it's maybe just below Kyoshi Island for me in A tier. King of Umashu. This is where you meet Bumi, who's one of my favorite characters in the show. This is where you first get to see some earthbending, and you get some good memes as well. This is the first introduction of the Cabbage Merchant, who's a reoccurring bit. I think he's in the show like 12 to 14 times. A great bit. And you get Pipple Papsilopsicopoulos the third, and Katara just stepping in and just nailing Aang's weird name. Yeah, Bumi's. There's a joke in this episode that I wish was reoccurring throughout the show, where Bumi and Sokka make like really shitty jokes, and you just hear like a like a little cough in the background. I love that. I wish that joke was in more episodes. And then you get an awesome fight between Bumi and Aang learning some lessons, and then seeing that Bumi was his childhood friend. This is a very good episode as well. High A tier. Again, this is my favorite show of all time, so you're going to see a lot of simping. You're going to see a lot of S and A tiers. It's just how it's going to be. I truly don't think there's that many bad Avatar episodes. This is just fun for me to kind of relive it and see which ones are my favorite and rank them. These two might move up to S, but they're definitely like high A tier as of now. Imprisoned. This is probably one of the weaker episodes for me. I know there's one coming up that people universally think is the worst one. This one's down there for me. Again, I don't think there's any bad episodes. It's just that the ones that are lower, I think they are the most, hey, this is a kid's show. Like, I feel like this one, the lesson and the themes are very heavy-handed, which is fine. And I know a lot of people don't like using a kid show as a defense, but it kind of can be sometimes. Like, kids have to understand the lessons you're going for. But it does also sway my opinion a little bit. Like, I can tell what they're going through, and I also don't think Haru is the most compelling character. He comes back, which is cool. Exactly, Kai, I agree. The worst episode comes across as being sort of cliche, like Kai says, or just like, yeah, trite, like it's been done before. But it still exists in the Avatar universe, which makes it by virtue better. But yeah, I just think this one all around, Haru is not that interesting of a side character. There is some good jokes in here. I like them pretending Katara's an earthbender, and then the dumb firebender guards thinking it's Momo. I like that as a joke. You've got George Takei as a Fire Nation prison captain, and that's cool. But overall, not a lot of interesting moments, and the fight at the end isn't super memorable with them slinging coal at the firebending guards, but yeah, I'd say C tier for this one. Chapter 7, we have the Spirit World. I think this is our first B tier. I like it. It introduces the spirit world, which is a great aspect of the show. It's actually one that I wish they visited a couple more episodes. I think this is also a two-parter. There's like Winter Solstice Part 1 and Part 2. But this is I'd say the weaker of the two parts. I still like it. It has the introduction to the spirit world, and it has Aang figuring out what he has to learn from Roku, talking to his dragon. But I think the beast in this episode is kind of weird looking. The subplot is not bad. It's got Iroh and Zuko. Iroh getting captured by earthbending guards. You kind of get to see Iroh be a bad bitch for the first time and escape from the earthbending guards by outsmarting them. And Zuko also choosing his uncle over the Avatar, which is your first look into, hey, Zuko has other motivations. He cares about his uncle. So I think the subplot is pretty good. I just think that overall it's not the most memorable, especially for Spirit World episodes. There's a lot more memorable creatures and a lot more memorable journeys to the spirit world. And then we've got the second part of the Winter Solstice, which is Avatar Roku, Chapter 8, where they basically bust their way into the Fire Nation, which I did not expect to happen this early on in the show. Like, they just fly their way into the Fire Nation that easy. It kind of caught me off guard, but obviously there's huge blockade and they have Appa, so they just kind of like not easily make their way through, but they do. They have to dodge a lot of firebender, catapult fire rocks, whatever you want to call them. And actually, this episode is the poster I just got at Fan Expo. This is the episode that this is from, them slinging the rocks at him. I think this is definitely better than the Spirit World episode. I think it's probably still B tier, maybe low A tier. It's very good, especially because when they get to the Fire Nation and they figure out their way into Roku's like statue room, the ending is like amazing, where Aang turns into Roku and just fucks up all the Fire Nation mages. It's great. Yeah, I guess you're kind of right. The stakes for the whole show are set. Yeah, I think, Kai, I think you're right. Which is actually maybe now that you say that, might bump it up to low A tier. I think this is where Roku kind of lays out what the deal is for Aang. And I think does he tell him about Sozin's comment in this episode? I think he might. But there is some memorable moments. I really like Appa trying to dodge the catapults. I think the animation is really well done there. And then Roku coming in and blasting them all at the end is really good. And then you also have the Fire Sage who's on their side. You get to see your first peek of like the Fire Nation not just being all robots, like all nationalistic robots. Like there's people who care about the greater good. So I'd say low A tier. It's a good one. Chapter 9, the Waterbending Scroll. So this has some good side characters and some good moments. It's got them practicing some waterbending, and then it's got the meeting of the pirates, who I like the pirates. I think they're all well realized. I like their design a lot. This is the first time Katara kind of makes her first mistake. She steals the scroll, gets them in trouble. I like when they're all fighting in the smoke. Aang clears the smoke. They're all like facing him, and he just puts the smoke back and then jumps his way out. The techniques they learn kind of come to fruition, and they like save the ship. And Appa's whistle comes back in this one, which is, I think he buys Appa's whistle in this episode, or finds it in this episode. It's not the most memorable, but the pirates were good little side antagonists. And then it's got Zuko and Iroh being involved as well. I would say this one's just higher than the Spirit World and B tier. It's good. Pirates are good. I like pirates. And then next up, we have Jet, a absolute classic. This has got to be S tier. Jet as a character is one of the better side characters. This is a good episode to showcase how to do side characters right. You know, in 20 minutes, you get to see this character's full motivation. You get to see like his past in the 20 minutes as well, and why he's doing the things that he's doing. He's just very dynamic. And I like Jet as a character a lot. And then it kind of, the conclusion of this is also a little bit emotionally weighty too, when you think that they've just blown up this whole earthbending village, and Katara's just like, no. And then you get to realize that, of course, they saved the day. Sokka saved the day. This is a big Sokka episode too, where you start to realize that he's a little bit smarter than you would have thought. And yeah, I just think Jet is a very well-designed character. And I'm glad that he came back later in the show. And it's got some good fights with Aang and Jet in the trees, where Jet's using his hook blades to like swing around. Yeah, I think it's also a very pretty episode. You don't see a lot of episodes taking place in like the forest in Avatar, but this one takes place in like some really beautiful like fall trees, and I think it's really cool. Next up, which is everyone's least favorite episode, The Great Divide, which is like the universally panned episode. I really don't think it's as bad as everyone says. It is much like the imprisoned episode where you can tell the lesson they were going for. And I just don't think that the Hanjis, I can't remember the name of the two tribes, something like that, but I don't think they're that memorable. I don't think the story of that Aang tells of them in their past is that memorable. Well, the one thing I do like about the retelling of their stories of the two different tribes is how they use art styles to represent each tribe. Like, they don't use the same art style to tell the story for each one, which is really cool. And then when Aang tells the story together, he kind of blends them together, which is very cool. I think that's a very underutilized moment. But yeah, overall, unmemorable. The characters, you're never gonna. I don't even remember their names, so that goes to show how unmemorable it is. Overall, it's still part of Avatar universe. It's still good. It's still got some good Sokka Katara bickering moments. But C tier. I kind of agree. It's probably the worst episode. We'll see as we continue on. Then we come to The Storm, which is my favorite episode in book 1. Favorite chapter in book 1. I think this is where you really get to... Zuko's character really opens up, which is probably why I love it so much. But it also ties Zuko and Aang together. Like, it draws a lot of parallels. You're basically having flashbacks of the two of their stories side by side and connecting them as characters, which is really cool. That's just like the subplot. There's still the main plot of them, like Sokka getting stuck in the storm, and same with Zuko's ship, and then they get intertwined, and then you get to see again Zuko make a good character choice where he chooses his crew over chasing the Avatar, making sure that they're safe. But yeah, you get to see what happened to Zuko, and it's really fucked up, and you get to see Aang basically being told how he has to be the Avatar, and the rest of the Air Nomad kids kind of like exile him for that. And then, yeah, you get to see Aang kind of inner turmoil of dealing with that and why he ran away in the first place. It's because he couldn't deal with that pressure at such a young age. And I think tying the two stories together was excellently handled, and seeing Zuko's past is real good. And yeah, I think this is just definitely the best chapter in book 1. Avatar just has like banger after banger. It's hard to like. It's not like there's any filler. If I was doing like a Hunter x Hunter tier list, there would be like a bunch of D tier where it's like, oh, here's the 25 filler episodes. But it's like right from the storm we move on to the Blue Spirit, which is a great episode. That's definitely S tier. I think it's probably, I might reorganize these after, but I'll put it just in S tier for now. But yeah, we get the introduction to the Blue Spirit, which is Zuko's like secret identity. We get to see Aang trying to help sick Sokka and Katara by getting them some frogs put in their mouths, and him having a cool battle with these arrow guys that Zhao hires. The fights in this episode are really good, especially when Aang gets rescued by the Blue Spirit. And yeah, you don't know who he is until the end of the show. And for the first time I watched this, I really didn't. Like, I thought it might be a new character, and then the reveal that it's Zuko. And it also has, I think it's this episode. It is this episode. It has one of my favorite parts in the show that really just kind of hits, where Aang's like sitting in the treetop after he rescues Zuko when Zuko gets knocked out, and he's like talking about how he was friends with Kuzan, a friend in the Fire Nation, and he's just like, do you think we could have been friends? And then Zuko attacks him, he runs away, and I'm just like, damn, that hits. Oh, you also get Katara trying to get Momo to bring back water for them, and he's just bringing back like all this random shit, and they've got like, by the end of the episode, there's like 500 different like random miscellaneous things piled on top of them, and Sokka just saying nonsense. Yeah, it's a really good episode. Yeah, Kai says we're basically in the part of the show where there are no more weak episodes for me, and I agree. I'd say there's maybe a couple that'll be like B tier, but I don't think there might not be any more C tiers. We'll see. Next chapter, Fortune Teller. I think this one is a little weaker. I think this might be the last weak one for me. It's not bad, but again, it comes down to like the side characters and how memorable they are for me. And I don't think the Fortune Teller herself is that memorable. She doesn't really teach them anything or add anything to the story. She's just kind of a plot device. But yeah, this episode, they go to this town and realize that it's going to get destroyed by a volcano, but they all believe the Fortune Teller. It says, because she says it's not going to, the volcano's not going to destroy the town. And then they go up the mountain and they're like, oh no, the volcano's definitely going to destroy the town. They try and convince everyone, they just don't believe her. And so they have to figure out a way to save them all. The only thing I like about this episode, I think, is just the character dialogue. This is where Aang's trying to show that he likes Katara, and I really like the dialogue there. There's some really smartly written dialogue, especially when Aang talks to Sokka and is like, I like someone, and Sokka's like, I think I know who you mean, and Aang thinks he's talking about Katara, but he's talking about the little girl that's following Aang around and giving him advice for his sister that he doesn't know. I think that's very well written. But there's no fights in this episode, which can be fine, but I think if there isn't, the premise has to be more interesting, and I don't think the fortune teller was... It kind of feels a little frustrating having all these people just be like, no, we're just going to listen to everything she says. Kind of on Sokka's side here, feeling his frustration. So I'd say this is like low B tier. But yeah, after that, it starts to get to no bad ones, I think, for me as well. We'll see. But chapter 15, we've got Bato of the Water Tribe. This is probably B tier as well, maybe A tier. It's got Sokka and Katara meeting Bato, who's their dad's friend, and Aang starting to get jealous, thinking that they're going to ditch for their father, and Aang kind of makes his first big mistake finding the map to their dad, or the letter about their dad, and not giving it to them and crumpling it up. Doing so tearfully. He's not happy that he made that decision, but yeah, you can tell that he's afraid that his new friends are going to leave him. And then they do when they find out that he hid that from them, but then they inevitably come back, make the right decision. And it's got Zuko hiring, I think her name's June, the lady on the rat shear, the crazy looking half mole, half badger rat thing that sniffs Aang out and tracks him down. I think the fight in this episode is really good, where Zuko and Aang fight in the perfume place, and they fight a lot like around the well. I really like that, and fighting on the rooftops and stuff. I think the fight is really good in this episode. And then using the perfume to make the rat shear go blind was also kind of terrifying. I think this is a solid B tier, though. Nothing super memorable. I'd say probably the highest of B tier so far. Chapter 16, The Deserter. This is where I think this episode has a lot of good stuff. This is where they disguise themselves, go to the fire festival, or like a little festival that this Fire Nation tribe is having. You meet Zhang for the first time, which was Aang's first firebending teacher. And I think the character that brings you to Zhang is hilarious. I think he's got a lot of really good lines. He's talking about Zhang, how he was the first to like desert the Fire Nation or whatever, and he's like, I was the second. You don't get a statue for that, but that's okay though. I just really like that character. It ties a lot of the other characters back into this story as well. Like you get to find out that Zhao was Zhang's like disciple, like learned under him, and you get to see Aang like take the advice that was given by Zhang, saying that Zhao has no control, and use that against him to burn all of his own ships. It's very smart. And then also Aang burns Katara, and that's a real good scene where you see that he's definitely not ready to be learning firebending yet. He's got no control. Yeah, I thought that when Katara got burned, she was just going to have those scars on her for the rest of the show. It was like pretty gnarly. The fight with Zhao is great, and the lesson he learns from hurting Katara is really emotional and good. This is definitely an A tier. Then we have chapter 17, the Northern Air Temple. This has got to be, again, one of my favorite episodes in book one. I'd say it's S tier. It does a really good job at world building this air temple. I can't remember the kid's name, but the kid in the wheelchair is great. It's got its first like disabled character, which the show does really good representation. And this is the first glimpse into that before Toph. Yeah, it's just very cool to see like this old civilization kind of being reutilized by these new people, these new settlers, and Aang like learning to understand that, you know, obviously he's upset when he first gets there because it's his air temple that has a lot of history, and they're kind of like building onto it and not respecting it. He then by the end learns that, you know, like this is their home now, and anything to help them, like, you know, they can learn to coexist with the air temple and build onto it and create new history. And that's really cool. It's got some good Sokka moments. The fight is amazing. This is the first like big scale fight, I think. Like that's not just person to person. This is like a bunch of Fire Nation soldiers like climbing up the mountain and them like dropping bombs on them and stuff. And I think it's very well done. And yeah, like Kai says, it freaking foreshadows into the third season. Like the blimp at the end of this that the Fire Nation soldiers find doesn't come back until the third season, where you realize that they have blimps now because of this episode. I think the side characters in this are really good. I think the engineer and his son are great. And seeing all the air temples is always a treat. We've got chapter 18 right before the 2-part finale. This is the Waterbending Master, where you meet Paku, which is Katara and Aang's first waterbending teacher, who doesn't want to teach girls because he's a sexist old man, and that's like their culture in the northern water tribe. This episode is great. It was so cool seeing the northern water tribe, because the southern water tribe is literally just a bunch of igloos and there's like 25 people here, but this is like a full city where they've like built out of ice, and it's really cool. I always love seeing the cities and how they make them feel like each element, and they do that so well for especially the earthbending ones. But yeah, I wish you got to see more of the northern water tribe because it's very cool. It's got Sokka's second love interest, which I think is built up very well. They definitely both like have really good banter and connect with each other. I think, is it this episode where you get to see the fight between? Yeah, this is the fight between Paku and Katara as well, which is the coolest waterbender fight in the first season. This is where you first get to see them like surfing on the water, turning it into ice at the same time. Cool shit, which is used a lot in the rest of the show. It's very cool to see the main characters learning techniques and then implementing them throughout the whole show. Like in the last fight with Katara and Azula, she uses like the water surfing that she learned from Paku. I think Yue is a good character. Yeah, this is before they set up the battle, so Yue basically tells Sokka she's engaged and shit goes wrong. But I think they kiss in this episode. The only thing that happens with Zuko in this episode is Zhao tries to blow him up with the pirates. Iroh thinks he's exploded for a hot second, but he's not. He's fine. And then they like plot to basically go out on their own and go into to get the Avatar. But yeah, very good episode. Very good scenery. Very good fight. Overall, definitely S tier. And so will the next two, which is the 2-part finale of Book 1, The Siege of the North. And the first one, you get to see Katara beating up all the other pupils of Paku and being the best waterbender because she is that bad bitch. And then you get to see the cool ass freaking black snow in the air that is used a couple times in the show when you know like a bunch of firebenders are about to invade the water tribes, which is hella cool and very suspenseful. Yeah, you get to see a big siege on the northern water tribe and going out and fighting some boats and realizing that there's like 100 of them. You get to see more with Yue and Sokka. I think this is the episode, yeah, where Zuko goes off on his own, and I think this was the first time I got really emotional when Iroh basically says that he thinks of Zuko like his own son, and before he leaves, and is like making sure that he's gonna be okay. Oof. Hurts to even talk about. I love Iroh so much. Yeah, you get to meet Tui and La, the water spirits, and this is just before Aang goes into the spirit world to connect with them, and Zuko like steals him at the end, steals his physical body and starts taking him into the snow, and that's where the episode ends. But yeah, easy S tier. I'll organize these better after, but definitely an S tier. And then part 2, I'm just gonna throw that in S tier as well, but talk about it a little bit because I agree with you, Kai. I think this is probably top 3 of the first season for me, or first book, and part 2 is definitely better than part 1. Part 2 is crazy, man. It has so much going on. You got Aang going in the spirit world and meeting fucking Ko, which is like one of the coolest designed creatures ever, the face stealer. He's so intimidating. I wish there was more scary shit like that, but God, Ko is awesome. And you get that monkey, that apathetic monkey at the beginning that just won't tell Aang where to go. And then when Aang gets back, they find him and bring him back to where the water spirits are. The editing in this episode is crazy. Like when Zhao first picks up the moon spirit and the whole show just goes red, and then Iroh coming in and being like, if you kill, Iroh's just so cool. It's like, if you kill this fish, I will unleash everything that you do at tenfold. And I'm like, oh God, Iroh's about to pop off. And then, yeah, he like puts the fish back for a moment and then kills it. And then the whole show goes black and white, but they still edit like the fire in color and the fire and the reflections in the water. It's like the coolest editing ever. And then when the other half of the spirit goes into Aang to make like the big ass water fish, like that's all blue. And the blue reflections on the black and white. Oh, this episode's so freaking cool. This is definitely a high S tier episode. And then you've got an emotional conclusion to it too, where this episode might be second to the storm for me. And this up here as well, like somewhere around there. I'll organize it after, but holy crap, like I'm just remembering how much is in this episode. Not only do you have all of that and Zhao like meeting his end at the end here and Zuko making the decision not to like kill him, but he still dies on his own. And then you have, Yue turning into the moon spirit. Very emotional, spiritual ending. So good. And then also the Azula reveal right at the end as well of this episode. Like you get to see, it's not much, but you do get to see Ozai like saying Azula's got to go do some shit. And you're like, ooh, what's she going to be all about? And then you realize she's the coolest character in the show and real fucked up. Very memorable. And then we're on to book 2. So quick. Blasting through it. Let's start off on book 2. We have chapter 1, the Avatar State. I know a lot of people book 2 is their favorite, and book 2 has my favorite episode, a couple of my favorite episodes, but I think for me the show just gets better and better. I think it goes book 1, book 2, book 3, and book 1 is still better than pretty much every other TV show, but if I had to rate them, it'd be book 1, book 2, book 3. I think you connect more with the characters, there's more stakes the further it gets, the animation gets better, everything gets better in my opinion, character development gets better. So chapter 1's the Avatar State. This is where Aang thinks he meets his earthbending teacher, this emperor, and this, I can't remember where they are, but he's basically using him to saying that we need to fight the war now and trying to get him to activate the Avatar State so they can start the war way before Aang's ready. It also has the introduction of Azula and her opening monologue, and then you get to see her kind of try and convince Zuko that their dad wants him back, and you get to see how much Zuko like cares about what his dad thinks and is just like willing to just go, and then realize it's a trap and fight Azula and see how much more powerful Azula is than him. Then Iroh rescues him and they leave. But yeah, Aang's journey here got this dickhead Earth Emperor who makes him activate the Avatar State by fucking with Katara, and then he like basically murders them all. And Katara calms him down. Every time Katara calms him down out of the Avatar State is very emotional. I think I probably cried in this episode too. But just having the introduction of Azula is gonna bump this one up a lot. So I think this is like low A tier because Azula is great. Cave of the Two Lovers, probably my second favorite episode of book 2. This is S tier, absolutely. I think these like cave nomads are the funniest fucking characters. Is this real or a legend? Oh, it's a real legend is like one of the best lines in the whole show. It's amazing. Everything they say is great. Sokka repeatedly just like being so dumb with them the whole time is hilarious. I love when they're just singing behind him and he's just pissed the whole time. It's great. And then it also has really good Aang and Katara tension where you think they might kiss for the first time. One of the small problems people have with the show is that it doesn't build the relationships a lot, and I think it does so the most in book 2. This is definitely one of those moments, and I just don't think they carry it quite enough. I still am an Aang Katara shipper. I think that they belong together, but I do wish they built it more because this episode really built the love between the two of them. Also, the Cave of Two Lovers has the final shot of the show foreshadowed. Oh yeah, I guess you're right. It does. Right before they kiss. Yeah. And it's got the Badger Moles. It's got some great songs by the Nomads, and then it's got subplot with Zuko and Iroh is pretty good as well, where Iroh keeps getting himself into trouble by eating stuff, and then they meet those two Earth villagers who help them out, and Zuko's like, kind of learns a lesson there, but still ends up stealing their horse at the end. But he gets to connect with someone who's also been hurt by the Fire Nation, like has a scar, which is something that is a huge deal for him. Is his scar kind of like is a big part of his character for himself, obviously us as well, but yeah, I think this episode has a lot. I love the story of how Umashu was made with the two lovers. The cave is all very interesting. Yeah, definitely an S tier. I know I don't have to ship them, but I feel like I do because there's so many Zutara shippers. It's almost like for fandom wise, there's like as many Zutara shippers as there are Katang shippers. I guess I don't have to shipping is the wrong term, but I support their relationship is what I'm saying. Chapter 3, Turn to Umashu, where they go back because Aang's like, Boomy's got to be my earthbending teacher. And then they realize it's been taken over by the Fire Nation already. This one's really big for like the firebending arc because you get Azula basically getting her squad together. This is where you meet Ty Lee and May, who I love as characters as well. They're really good side companions to Azula. So Azula being really cold and calculated, whereas May is kind of on that side, but she like doesn't care about anything to the point where she doesn't care enough to like actually help out in a lot of situations, whereas Ty Lee is like very bubbly. And I really like their abilities too. It's nice to see Azula being the probably most powerful firebender at this point in the show, paired with Ty Lee, whose ability is awesome. That this is the first episode you get to see that, where she just stops Katara from bending, and then May just throwing some daggers. It's cool. And then I like how they get them out of the city, making them all look like they're sick, walking out. Momo stealing the baby. Some good physical comedy in this. Yeah, the fight with their gang versus Azula's gang is really good. And you get to see more of Boomy, which is always a treat. When he's just trapped in a coffin, he can still earthbend because he's the most powerful earthbender in the world next to Toph. Yeah, I think this is probably an A tier. Yeah, as Kai says, Ty Lee gets a shout out for being the person that benders fear without having to bend. Yeah, because that's definitely not Sokka at this point. Ty Lee is the first character in the show that can't bend that is equally as powerful as benders, I would say. Well, it just makes her scary as well because she can take bending, which is not good. Yeah, Boomy is literally just vibing. And that's kind of what he teaches Aang. He's like, there's a neutral Jing as well, and it's where you do nothing. And he's just like, I'm just not going to do anything. When he turns to in the flashback, and the guy's like, what are we going to do? They're taking over the city. He's like, I'm going to do nothing. I love Boomy so much. Yeah, good episode. A tier for sure. Next up, Chapter 4, The Swamp. This is probably A tier, if not S tier, somewhere up here. The Swamp is very cool. This is the first introduction to like bending that's not straight up the 4 elements that we've learned. Like this one, you get people bending stuff in the swamp. Like you get the guy bending the water in the vines to bend the vines essentially. So it's your first introduction to, hey, you can only bend these 4 elements essentially, but you can use them in interesting ways, and I like that. The swamp as like a setting is great. The big tree that connects the whole swamp is very cool. You get some redneck swamp guys trying to eat Appa and Momo. I love them a lot. I'm glad they come. This show does a really good job at bringing back characters throughout the show. The ending hits a lot more because all these characters that you saw throughout the show come back to fight, and the swamp guys are part of that, and they're great. But yeah, it also has some great character moments as well. You get to see Katara seeing their mom, and Sokka seeing Yue, seeing people that mean a lot to them. And you get to see Aang's vision of Toph, who you don't know at that point. And that makes you real excited to wonder who that is. And then she's nothing like what the vision is when you meet her. But yeah, I think the visions are great. Some more spiritual stuff. This is actually the first time Aang energy bends, where the swamp guy tells Aang that the swamp's all connected from the big tree, and in even more broader sense, we're all connected on the planet. Then Aang uses energy bending to find where Appa is because they're connected, and he can see that. So this was like the first moment, like at the end of the show, where he energy bends Ozai, where you get to see that for the first time, which is very cool. And I think this is a great episode with a very cool setting. It's nice to see. Like I said, this is probably the only other like foresty setting, but in the swamp is cool. It's got good vibes, foggy, spooky vibes. Next up, Avatar Day, Chapter 5, the one where they go to the town where they don't like the Avatar. And they're burning up all the Avatar things. I actually like this episode. This is like, I would compare this to the fortune telling episode from book 1 in terms of like, oh, they just go and do this like side adventure at this town. But I like the characters in this town and the setting a lot better. A Burning Man episode. It's got Sokka dressing up as a Sherlock Holmes and doing some sleuthing. It's got the reincorporation of Foaming Mouth guy in an even slower, better way when they go back to Kyoshi Island. I love him. It's also got Aang and the guys in the prison who you think are going to be these tough dudes, and then they're just like, you should tell her how you feel. And I love that as well. This is the first Kyoshi reveal where she takes Aang's body and she's like, yeah, no, I murdered that bitch. He deserved it. And then firebenders end up attacking here, and they save the town, and then they like make a new Avatar Day to celebrate him. Yeah, we learn more about the avatars here. It only takes up like a couple minutes, but this is where Zuko decides to leave Iroh, which is awful and very sad. I hated that. But very big moment for him as well, where he's like, I'm going to go off on my own. But yeah, Avatar Day, slept on, A tier. Okay, next up, Blind Bandit. Absolute easy S tier. This is the best character introduction I've ever seen. Like, introducing Toph, holy shit. This is going to be probably higher, so is Cave of Two Lovers, but there's no way this is not an S tier episode. Toph's introduction is amazing. The whole showing, basically, like, the bat sonar and Aang's, like, little pan where he's, like looking, and it's all in slow motion, and then she just, like, does one kick Earthbending to me looks so fucking cool. Like every time Toph earthbends, I'm just like blown away by how cool she looks when she does it. Like they nailed the animation so well with earthbending. Not even like I'm not even talking about the rocks. I'm just talking about the way Toph moves is so cool. You get to see how absolutely powerful Toph is. Like adding her to the group, she's just like way above anyone else in the group at this point when she's added. And yeah, you get to see the boulder takes issue with your comment. Love the boulder. Fire Nation man, who's just an earthbender dressed up as Fire Nation guy, get rocks thrown at his head. Really like the earthbending teacher. You get to see some straight up ableism by Toph's parents, and it sets off another like subplot where Toph's parents are trying to get her back, and you have these two guys trying to track Toph down. I think that's at the end of this episode at the very end of this episode, they send the two guys after Toph, and Toph decides to go with them because she doesn't want to be with her parents who don't let her do anything and wants to go help the Avatar. And her fight with all of them at the end of this episode is just so good, where she's like, nah, leave them to me, and she just destroys them all. And it's got some funny moments too. I love when Aang is sitting at the dinner table and Toph keeps like fucking with him. Her parents don't know what's happening. Just a good episode with a bunch of good side characters. All of the people in the wrestling ring are interesting. I wish they came back more. The two people that come after Toph, the earthbender teacher and the guy who runs the arena, end up being really good too. I think they play well off of each other. I think they were good characters. Easy S tier. Toph is the boss. Zuko alone is definitely an S tier episode. That's chapter 7, the next one. I don't think there is a subplot in this one. I think it's all Zuko going on his journey. Yeah, it is. Yeah, this is the episode where you find out a lot about Zuko's childhood, and basically this is his first episode without Iroh. And you see he's kind of suffering to even eat. And again, amazing example of reincorporation in this episode. The couple that he chooses not to steal the food from at the very beginning is the one that's pregnant that like they end up delivering the baby later in the show. Like every side character in the show just matters, and it makes you care about the world and like ramifications of things happening. But yeah, you get Zuko ending up in this town where the earthbender guards are kind of bullies to the town, and you get him helping out this family and this little kid kind of looking up to him, and Zuko teaching him how to use swords properly. Yeah, and then you get to see Zuko's mom and flashbacks to how Zuko was basically raised by her and why he turned out to be like a softie, and how Ozai just treated him like shit, and Azula was the favorite child by like a large margin. For some reason, it really hits me when he's like repeating to himself, Azula always lies, and then it cuts to the future and he's doing the same thing. Oh. And you get to see like the history of what happened to like how Ozai got into power and stuff by essentially killing his dad. It's not actually explicitly said, but there's no way he just died in his sleep that close to Ozai basically saying, hey, don't give Iroh the throne, you should give it to me instead. And then at the end, I think it's also great that they chose to like have the earthbenders all hate him when they find out he's Fire Nation, because of everything the Fire Nation has done throughout the world. Like it would make sense that this kid would just be like, as soon as he finds out he's Fire Nation, even though he connected with him, be like, no, I hate you, like I don't want anything to do with you. S tier. Next up we have The Chase. That's me. Chapter 8. I think it's a good episode, a good chapter, but it always makes me feel so tired. The way they portray how tired they are in this episode really stresses me out. I get so stressed. I was telling Nat this too. I just like, I can't get over how tired they look. It makes me want to take a nap for them, which I mean, I guess it just means it's done really well, but I think this is a really good episode. I think this is probably one of the best fights in the whole show, with Aang, Zuko, and Azula fighting in the village. I think it showcases each of their talents and abilities really well. Yeah, the fight at the end is so freaking good, especially when Aang like first runs into that building that's on the second story, and he's like on the air ball, and Azula like does some gymnastic moves to avoid falling, and then Zuko just eats shit running into it. I think the whole fight scene is amazing. Like you get to see some Toph earthbending, and then it also has Toph leaving the group and having a very good conversation with Iroh. Another episode I cry at because of that conversation, because Iroh is such a beautiful soul and just has tea with Toph. Iroh is like the best character in terms of like, I think he's just, you know, morally very strong, has a lot of wisdom to give, but he also like, he never like takes advice or takes his own advice. And this is the first moment where you see like him kind of learning that when Toph is like, you should tell Zuko that you need him too. And he's just like, sips his tea and he's like, yeah, maybe I should. And I think that's really good. It's really good. Yeah, this is probably S tier as well, I think. Very, very good pacing, as Kai says. And it also ends with freaking Iroh getting shot. And that's a huge cliffhanger. And them trying to help Zuko and him being furious and upset and kind of scares them away. And it also ends with them actually getting to finally go to sleep, which is a nice payoff. Chapter 9, Bitter Work. This is where Toph first teaches Aang to earthbend, and we get a little Iroh Zuko stuff going on as well. Flashback to Iroh and Zuko when they were younger, and Iroh like taking care of him because he's Zuko's actual dad. But yeah, this is the main plot is Toph teaching Aang to earthbend, and it being really hard for him because earthbending is like the opposite of airbending. You have to be very like precise and still with your movements, and he's not really getting it, and Toph's getting frustrated. And then Sokka gets stuck in the ground, and a little cute little hippo guy, saber-toothed moose lion, yeah, sits on his head, and he's just kind of stuck there the whole time. I think this episode's probably beat it. Actually, you know what? I think it's A tier. Yeah, trying to teach Aang to stand his ground instead of run for his problems. Yeah, exactly. And he does by the end of the episode when it comes to helping his friends. And then he learns that for himself as well when he stands up to Toph right after that. And she's just like, you're ready, Twinkle Toes, earthbend. And then he does it. It's very satisfying conclusion to that. But I think the subplot is honestly a little more interesting. I think that plot is great. Seeing Aang earthbend for the first time, it's really good. But the subplot with Zuko and Iroh, you get some really good moments. I mean, obviously Iroh is like a sweet guy up until this point, but you don't really see him like his alignment. But at this point is where he starts to teach Zuko that all the elements are one, and there needs to be balance in the world. So you kind of get at this point that Iroh's maybe not just a Fire Nation soldier anymore. Maybe he cares for the greater good as a whole for everyone. And he shows him in the sand like how they're all connected and what they mean. And then he shows him the technique of bending lightning, something that he learned from the Water Tribe. And I think what really sells this episode is, which I'm going to put as an S tier, it's a lot of S tiers, is the part at the end where Zuko climbs up the mountain and tries to bend the lightning and is just crying. In the last scene is him just frustratedly and fearfully like crying to the ether, trying to bend lightning, but it won't hit him. And he's just like, do it, you never held back on me before. I'm just like, oh, Zuko, you're such a sad boy. Chapter 10, the library. God, another great chapter. This is where they go into the underground library and meet the big owl guy who's got all the knowledge. Yeah, plot focused episode that kind of drives the main story forward a lot. Yeah, you learn, I think, just the eclipse in this episode. You already learned about the comet, but you learn about the eclipse in this episode. So it's, a lot of importance to the main story because this kind of sets up, hey, we're going to fight the Fire Nation on this day because the eclipse is going to block out the sun and stop them from firebending. You get this cool ass owl, more spirit stuff. Always like more spirit stuff. You get really good blind jokes from Toph. I think this is the first blind joke and probably the best blind joke where she's like, there it is. And then she's like, that's what it'll sound like when you guys find it. It's good. Very good. You get to see the flashback to Zhao, which you already knew that he was like at this library, but you get to see him discovering the stuff. Yeah, they're all taking like their mini vacations at the beginning. Ty says S tier. I agree this is S tier. I don't know where it'll be in my S tier, but it's top 5 of book 2 for sure. Owl guy is super cool, and same with the library guy that they're hanging out with. No, this isn't Cactus Juice. Not quite yet, Ty. I think that's the next episode. And yeah, Appa gets stolen at the end of this episode. That's a huge... Any episodes that end, or chapters that end with big cliffhangers like that are obviously like very memorable. Library is S tier for sure. Oh man, this is just like a lot of S tiers now. Yeah, the next one is chapter 11. This one is the one with Cactus Juice, which is also an S tier. Sorry, guys. But it's my favorite show. I think this episode is amazing. You get to see Aang with a completely different emotion than you're used to, which is just straight up anger. He enters the Avatar state in this episode for the first time through revenge. Like he wants to deliver justice to the sandbenders that stole Appa, which is crazy because you've never seen that emotion from him before. He's just like angry this whole episode and upset, and it's really hard to watch. It's really hard to see Aang like this, but it also like is brilliantly broken up by Cactus Juice Sokka, who drinks cactus juice. It'll quench you. And has a bunch of funny lines. It just cuts really well between that and then Aang in turmoil, going off on his own, looking for Appa. Man, yeah, this is easy S tier because it also has the introduction of the White Lotus group that Iroh's a part of, which you don't learn too much about in this episode, but you learn it exists. So you basically learn Iroh's a part of this secret group that transcends the nations and, you know, sees all the elements as one, which is fucking great. Just really good, funny animation, and it ends on a very emotionally high moment where Aang goes into the Avatar state and Katara just grabs him, doesn't say a word, and just like kind of just is there for him, which is really big. Also to teach kids that sometimes there's nothing you can say, but being there is enough. And man, I'm just gonna try and not cry this whole video. That moment is just like that's how the episode ends too, with her just like pulling him down and hugging him, and it's just fucking it gets you, man. This whole show. Also, sandbending, cool. And yeah, like Toph can't bend on the sand, so she's kind of useless. That's definitely S tier. Next chapter, chapter 12, The Serpent's Pass. This is probably A tier. I don't think it's quite S tier. I think this episode's great. Anytime Aang is crying, I'm crying. Aang is just too innocent of a boy. I just empathize with him a lot. And yeah, this episode, it's a cool little side journey. They try and get into Ba Sing Se with the tickets by going through like the tram system, but that doesn't work. Cabbage guy makes a return, gets his shit fucked again, and then they decide to go through the Serpent's Pass, and they take this pregnant woman and her husband through the Serpent's Pass. It's got some good bending moments with them going under the water and making like a water tunnel to get their way across, and then that doesn't work because the serpent comes and they gotta fight him while making their way across the water too, and Toph can't swim. So Suki got to jump in and rescue him. It's got some good Sokka and Suki moment as well, where they kind of show that they like each other still, but Sokka's not ready because his girlfriend is the moon, and that just recently happened, which is also great to see Sokka like struggling with that. The ending of this episode is amazing too. They have the baby and name it Hope, and then Aang starts crying, and it's just like, you guys gave me hope again, and it's just it's cute. It's very good. And then it also has Zuko meeting Jet, them doing a little sub thing together, and it's just interesting to see where that was gonna go. But yeah, I'd say A tier. It's kind of a filler episode at the end of the day. It's them getting to Ba Sing Se, but they're not there yet, so they're doing a little side adventure. I think it's a good side adventure though. Definitely A tier. Chapter 13, The Drill. S tier. Easy S tier. Also one of my favorite fights in the show, with Azula and Aang on top of the big drilling tank. That shit is so cool. Just the big drill in general is a very cool, set piece. And it's got them going into the drill, and it's got them fighting Mei and Ty Lee. And Sokka kind of showing his strengths as well, being the basically planning genius that he is, figuring out the plan for them. I just think that this whole episode is sold by the last 5 minutes of Azula and Aang fighting on top of the tank, and then Aang like sprinting up the wall, doing his airball and running up the wall, and then flying down and smashing the rock into the drill is the coolest shit ever. Yeah, I would say besides that part, the rest of the episode it's like a full-on battle episode. It's just basically them doing shit in the tank, and a little bit more with Iroh. This is also where Jet finds out that Iroh firebends, and they're both firebenders, and starts to go kind of crazy, obsessive over it. But that's just a minor subplot. Most of the episode is made up of them dealing with this drill, and it's very focused and very good, and it comes to an amazing conclusion. And then they make it into Ba Sing Se. Ty asked which two are the C tier episodes. They're Imprisoned, the episode where Katara meets Haru, and then they go on the firebending ship where the earthbenders don't want to earthbend. They're trapped in prison. And The Great Divide, which is the episode where they go into the canyon with the two tribes that are very different and basically work out their differences. But yeah, S tier for The Drill. City of Walls and Secrets. All of the Ba Sing Se shenanigans have to be, like, I think this is probably S tier as well. I know there's a lot of S tier episodes, but it's the best show, so that's fine. I think this is S tier as well. Like, I didn't expect some conspiracy theory, interesting, like, inner politics to happen in Avatar. Like, first of all, you get to see Ba Sing Se for the first time, this massive city. You get to see that it's very, like, class divided. There's the outer wall and the inner wall, and then the, like, where all the super rich people live. Not only do they not care about the poor part of the city, they also, like, pretend it doesn't exist for the rest of the rich people. They are trying to convince everyone that the war doesn't exist. I mean, they basically tell everyone in the town there's no war. There's no war in Ba Sing Se. And I think that's so cool. Like, it just builds a lot of good story elements. And then it's got Jet trying to prove that Zuko and Iroh are firebenders. And it's got a really good fight with them in the city. And it concludes with Jet brainwashed, saying there's no war in these walls. And it's just a really, like, I was like, man, where's this going? This is crazy. Ty says, what war? Yeah, sorry, there's no war in Ba Sing Se. We know that. It also shows Bosco, who's just a bear, which is also just a great, funny bit as well, because all the animals in this show are combinations of other animals. And then they're like, no, it's just a bear. And they're like, this place is weird. So that's an S tier as well. And then, shocker, we get to another S tier, The Tales of Ba Sing Se, which is my favorite episode in the show. Like, undeniably will always be my favorite episode. It's got, I don't even gonna talk about it that much because it's just gonna make me sad. It's basically 5 short stories in one episode. If it was just The Tale of Iroh alone, it would still be my favorite episode, but all the other ones are so good too. I think they showcase what the characters are about really well. I think The Tale of Sokka, where he does the poetry slam, is great. Just great comedy, and the guard at the end is like, hey, that's one too many syllables there, bub. He tosses him out the building. I think that's hilarious. The Tale of Aang is fantastic, where he figures out a zoo for all these animals. It's very goofy and shows his recklessness, but also his willingness to help, do whatever it takes to help, especially when it comes to animals. I think the tale of Toph and Katara is underrated. That always makes me cry too. It's the first time you really get to see Toph's emotional side. You kind of do in the first time you meet her when she leaves her parents, but this really shows that she has this hard shell exterior, but does really care about people's opinions. And Katara, being motherly and caring, like, reassures her. But yeah, The Tale of Iroh is just like, holy shit. How do you make a 4-minute short that well done? It's incredible. And the fact that it ties into the real world as well, like with Mako being his last episode, and they used like the painting of Iroh's son was Iroh Mako when he was a soldier, and it's just like, it's crazy how it has a lot of real world connections. Art imitates life. Yeah, it's beautiful. And then I also think The Tale of Zuko is so fucking good, where he goes on a date and you get to see him, like, what Zuko would be like if he was trying to be normal and do normal people things. And I think it's brilliant. And his last line when he slams the door and he just opens, like, it was nice. Oh, so cute. And then it also ends with plot relevance with Momo's tale, which I think is a great way to end the episode. You get all these like stories that don't advance the plot, but then you end on one that is like huge, where Momo finds Appa's footprint and realizes that he's in the city, and you get to also see how much Momo and Appa Momo cares for Appa. That episode is just a tear fest for sure. And then we get chapter 16, Appa's Lost Days. I want to rate this one C tier just because it makes me so fucking sad and mad that Appa gets treated this way. It's literally just like abusive Appa episode, and I hate watching it, but I'd say it's probably A tier because it's really cool to have a side adventure with Appa and see what was happening to him up until this point. But it's just like, it's hard to watch. But you get introduced to Guru Patik, who's one of my favorite characters, and see him do some energy bending on Appa and basically lead Appa back to Aang. But then he gets captured by the Dai Li, so you get to see where Appa ended up, which is, in Ba Sing Se. He's just stolen by the Dai Li, but at least he's like somewhat safe, just jailed. Get to see some flashbacks to Aang, when Aang and Appa first met, and basically Aang chose him like a Pokemon with an apple. Yeah, I'd say low A tier. It's not just about it being hard to watch. It's also just like, I don't know. It's cool to see a little side adventure with Appa. It does have some story relevance too, because you get to see the Kyoshi warriors fight for Appa, and then it doesn't show that they lose, but it shows that they're losing. So you figure that they've got beaten up by Azula and her gang. But yeah, I would say low A tier for this one. Quick name Azula's posse, Ty Lee and May. Are you kidding me? You think I'm new? If we did an Avatar quiz, I would crush you guys. All right, I've watched the show like 10 times. Let's go. Let's do it right now. No, let's not do it right now. Let me finish this tier list. Okay, chapter 17, Lake Laogai. This is another like adding to the conspiracy theory bit of the show. I think this is probably A tier, unless this is the episode where they fight with Jet, but I think that's the next episode. Oh, it is the episode where they fight this Jet. Might be S tier then. I think it's gotta be. It's so important. It's such an important episode. It also has the poster of Toph, I'm pretty sure, which is amazing. But yeah, this is where they finally figure out where Appa is. They head down into the sewers, the secret layer of the city. It also has like just a huge character development for Zuko. Iroh's kind of being like, you've got to make your own destiny. And then he's the one who finds Appa as the blue spirit before the gang and ends up letting him go instead of taking him. And it's got Iroh kind of like finally having enough with Zuko and being like, it's time for you to choose what you want. Like, ask yourself the big questions. Like, yeah, I think that's really big. And he makes the right decision and lets Appa go. No, Zuko chooses good in this one. Well, he does choose poorly at the end of the season, at the end of the book, but in this episode, he chooses right. He lets Appa go, but it has the Dai Li fighting Aang, Katara, Toph, and Sokka, and Jet's crew, Longshot and Smellerbee, and it has Jet dying at the end, which is very sad because you start to feel bad for him because he's clearly obsessed and his life's been destroyed by the Fire Nation, so you get where he's coming from. You empathize with it, even though you think he's making the wrong decisions. But he does end up, coming to be good by the end of it, and sacrifices himself to save Aang, and has Longshot's first line of the show because he was just a mute character up until this point. But as soon as Jet's life is in danger, he finally speaks up, and that adds a lot of emotion to the scene. And then it ends with them reunited with Appa, which is just a tear-jerking moment where Aang like jumps on him and he's like, "I missed you, buddy," and he's crying. Oh, it's gonna make me cry. Don't cry on stream. No tears on stream. I think that's a S tier as well. We're getting down to the last couple episodes of Book 2. Chapter 18, The Earth King. I feel like this might be A tier. This is the episode where they confront the Earth King and try and convince him that the Dai Li are evil and basically running this secret operation to manipulate the Earth King to do what they want, and they're really in control of the city. And so they like try and convince him by showing him the secret lair, but they've made it disappear. And so then they show him the drill, and he believes them, and locks up the Dai Li agents. Or I guess he doesn't lock up the Dai Li. He just locks up Long Fang, which is weird in hindsight. He probably should have locked up the Dai Li as well, but he doesn't. He makes them arrest him. Yeah, which he's dumb. Don't let the Earth King make any decisions. He's the dumbest dummy. I'm glad he just goes off on his own journey at the end with Bosco because he's not a good king. I think this is like an A tier, maybe a B tier. In terms of like Book 2, maybe low A tier, maybe B tier. It's just the whole episode is them trying to convince the Earth King that the Dai Li and Long Fang are evil. And I don't know. Scene, though, 'cause if it doesn't happen. It is important. It's an important episode, obviously, but it was kind of stretched out. I think it might be top B tier. It just kind of stretched out. I don't think it should have been taken the whole episode. And then the subplot here is Zuko going through his metamorphosis. He's like sick in bed. And Iroh's basically telling him that his decision was like in such contrast to who he thinks he is as a person that it's caused him to be sick. It does have Toph getting captured at the end. That's the big cliffhanger. But I don't think that comes out later as something really cool. I am kind of stretched out. You're kind of stretched out, Ty. You're like 9 feet tall, all right? I'm stretched in. Okay, chapter 19, The Guru. This is where Aang does his chakra business. I really like this episode. I think this might be S tier. There's a lot that happens in this episode. So basically at the end of the previous episode, they all go their separate ways because Sokka and Katara find out where their dad is located. So Sokka goes to meet their dad, and Katara stays to help the Earth Kingdom. Toph gets captured because she thinks that her mom is in Ba Sing Se. And then Aang goes to Guru Patik to learn about controlling the Avatar state. So this episode has a lot going on, and I think it's handled really well, considering it's got a lot of different paths to cover. I really love Guru Patik and Aang learning about his chakras and learning about the energy within himself and how to control the Avatar state. I think it's very well done spiritual episode. I like Sokka meeting his dad and seeing how similar they are and coming up with these weird inventions. Them getting to connect again is really good. And it has a very crucial moment that is very important to the whole show, which is Aang choosing Katara over the Avatar state and locking his chakra until the end of the show. And it's got some really cool scenes. I love the final chakra where you just see giant Aang floating in space, and Aang taking this purple bridge out to it. And then he sees Katara's in trouble and heads back. You also get to see that Azula, Ty Lee, and May have taken over the Kyoshi warriors and are pretending to be them. And the freaking Earth King again reveals all of the information to them right away. And so they know what's going on, and they know that, and then Katara comes in and they find out that Azula finds out that Zuko and Iroh are in the city, and everything starts to go to shit. So this episode, yeah, it covers a lot. Oh yes, and it also has Toph fucking metal bending, which is the coolest shit. And you get to see that she is, by and large, the best earthbender in the world. She created a new form of earthbending. Metal bends her way out of the cage she's in, which is awesome. And it's while you're hearing dialogue about how everything's connected and how all the elements, even metal, is just a part of Earth. And Guru Patik's telling you that, and it's cutting to Toph like figuring that out for herself. Very well done. S tier episode, easy. Final chapter in book 2, Crossroads of Destiny, absolute S tier. You get a very, very bad, crucial decision by Zuko. You get some really good fights between Azula and Katara, and Azula and Aang and Zuko, and Zuko and Katara. You get to see Iroh's famous little bit where he's like, "Did I ever tell you how I got the name the Dragon of the West?" And then he just drinks his tea and breathes fire on everyone, stepping out of his like wise uncle shell, blasting people with some fire. Yeah, love that. And then I really like the catacombs, the cave system setting that they fight in. I think it's really cool with all the green like crystals everywhere. And you get to see some Zuko and Katara stuff and them connecting as characters, seeing how similar they are in the grand scheme of things. Both lost their mother to the Fire Nation and to Ozai. And then, yeah, you get to see kind of this is the point where Iroh makes his decision to be on the Avatar side and kind of betrays Azula and the Fire Nation fully. From the way he was talking, you already got that, but like now he actionably like defends them and helps them escape, and then gets captured himself. And yeah, Zuko makes the decision to help Azula instead, which sucks and was a very frustrating first watch and very sad. But Azula is manipulative, and he also for years thought his destiny was to capture the Avatar and regain his father's honor, so it makes sense. But yeah, and then also Aang gets fucking blasted by lightning and almost dies when he tries to finally give up things that he cares about in this earthly realm and access the Avatar state. And as soon as he does, he gets shot by Azula's lightning, gets fucked up. Yeah, Ty says it sucks, but it's also everything Zuko has ever wanted. And yeah, it's hard to separate that at that point. It's such a crucial moment. And that's the end of book 2. Yeah, book 2 is incredible. I can see why everyone thinks it's their favorite. Like, that's a lot of S tier episodes for me as well. But I think book 3 just beats it out. Let's finish this with book 3. Chapter 1 is The Awakening. This is where Aang wakes up. He's got hair now, and Zuko goes back to the Fire Kingdom. You get some flashbacks again to Zuko's childhood and Zuko's decision. Iroh's in prison. Not too much happens here. It's basically just like setting up the 3rd season. I think this is probably one of the weaker chapters in book 3. Aang kind of goes out on his own because he's frustrated, thinking that he like failed everyone again. Tries to get to to Roku again, and they find him and let him know that they're gonna figure it out together. But I don't know. Not too much happens. Just Zuko being back at home, Azula toying with him a little bit. There's like a small fight with some another Fire Nation ship. That's not bad, but overall not super memorable. Zuko's like back on the throne. He's realized that he's still not happy. I think this is probably B tier. Chapter 2, The Headband. I like this episode. I think this is probably A tier. It's definitely not S tier, but it's got some footloose dancing. Aang teaches these Fire Nation kids to express themselves because he ends up in Fire Nation school and lets them all know that it's okay to like show some expression, and dancing's like a good way to do that. So they dance in a cave. I think it's A tier, low A tier. Other than that, it has Zuko visiting Iroh in prison. It's got some good jokes with Sokka and Katara dressing up like Aang's parents, calling themselves Mr. Fire and Sapphire. And it's got Flameo Hotman, and Aang just keeps calling everyone Hotman. Aang's journey at the school is great, and yeah, Zuko visiting Iroh in the prison is just fucking emotionally devastating. Seeing Iroh not talk to Zuko, so I'd say A tier. Next up, we have The Painted Lady. which I think is an underrated episode. I think it's A tier. I mean, it's obviously filler, but I think it's good filler. I really like the whole journey in this little swamp town, actually helping people in the Fire Nation. Again, seeing that there's people in this Fire Nation that are just people and not warlords or people who like want to dominate the rest of the world. They're also suffering. They're also poor, and industrialization kind of fucked their town up, which is cool to see them cover a topic like that. The Painted Lady is cool lore as well, even though it's Katara just dressing up as the Painted Lady, the way they like have Aang underneath her airbending for her, and Appa in the cave making monster noises and stuff, basically staging this whole spirit entrance to fuck with the Fire Nation guys is really awesome. And then she shows up at the end, which is good. Yeah, I think this is a good filler episode with them like saving this town. I like it. A tier. Chapter 4, Sokka's Master. S tier for sure. Huge Sokka episode. I really like Piandao. I think that's Sokka's master's name. And it's just cool to see a Sokka focused episode. Not a lot of those. It starts with a fucking meteor crashing into the planet and Sokka using that to make his sword. But yeah, it's basically Sokka finding a master to teach him swordsmanship, and him being shown his strengths over his weaknesses. You know, he's never going to be the best sword fighter, but he uses unique and interesting ways of fighting to help aid him. He uses his environment because he's smart. He's tactically smart, and that's where he really shines. And he does become a much more skilled sword fighter by the end of this, but he just is shown his strengths. And then he straight up tells this guy that he's a water tribe, and they're all like, "What the fuck, Sokka?" And he's just like, "Yeah, I knew that." And you find out that he's part of the White Lotus gang as well. I think he's a great side character, very memorable, and the fight with him with the swords is awesome, when you can't tell if he's really trying to kill him at the beginning or if he's just trying to teach him. Chapter 5, The Beach. Absolute S tier. Probably top of S tier for me. This might be one of my favorite episodes. It's so good. You get to see all of these privileged ass royalty kids just going to a normal party and trying to be normal and not being good at it. You get to see Zuko and Mei. I think they're a great couple. I love their line. It's like, "I don't hate you. I don't hate you too." But yeah, I get to see Zuko's jealousy. You get to see Azula trying to be normal. It has probably one of the best scenes in the whole show, with them all talking about their problems by the fire. And then Zuko, everyone asking like, "Who are you angry at, Zuko? Like me? Are you angry at Dad? All these people?" And he's just like, "I'm angry at myself." And like emotional gut punch at that moment. And you can see he's still struggling with what's right and wrong. And you get to see the first small glimpse into Azula's psyche, and see that even though she pretends it doesn't, it really bugs her that her mom thought of her as a monster. Even though in the end you get to see, even though it's a vision, you get to see that Azula's mom did care for her. But Azula was raised by a tyrant at the end of the day. Like Ozai was the one who really raised her. And this episode also has Sparky Sparky Boom Man, which is a great fucking subplot. I forgot that was in this episode, which like makes this stand out so much more because it breaks up the just character dialogue, no action. And his first shot is so like the sound that he makes, man, you gotta go rewatch the fight with him, the first one, because it cuts the music. There's no music in the background, and it just like him inhaling, and there's like bah, 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 and then fires these shots, and it's so intimidating. The fact that there's no music really makes the scene tense. Like a fight with an entity that they've never seen before, and shoots lasers from his head. I think this episode is easy high S tier. Chapter 6, Avatar and the Fire Lord. Really good exposition episode. I would say S tier as well. This is kind of like The Storm, which is one of my favorite episodes, where it connects Aang and Zuko again, but through past lives. It basically reveals that Zuko's grandpa was also Roku, that Roku married Sozin's sister, and so Zuko's journey is also part with Avatar. Combustion Man's a terrifying sub-villain. I wish there was more of him, more lore about him. Yeah, I do wish they dived into his past, but it's nice to have characters that are enigmas in this show, because they do dive into a lot of characters' past, and not knowing anything about Sparky Sparky Boom Man makes him even scarier. But this episode is great. I love Sozin and Roku's childhood and them growing up and seeing them, and that being told through Aang and Roku, and then Zuko reading about Sozin in the scroll that Iroh left for him to reveal his path as well, and really solidifies Zuko's journey and starting to make the right decision to be good. And watching Roku try and fight the volcano is incredible and terrifying. I think this episode is really great. And then you get to see, Sozin betray Roku and start the war. Just a very good exposition episode, learning a lot more about the world. You get to see Roku's journey as an avatar, learning earthbending, waterbending, and airbending, and see that he was friends with Gyatso as well. And it also has one of my favorite lines where Roku's just like, some friendships transcend even lifetimes, because Aang was friends with Gyatso too, and that's just beautiful. Yeah, the volcano is a great climax to this episode. Again, very dialogue heavy throughout the whole episode, and then you get this amazing fight with a volcano, which is fucking incredible. And then just to see Roku's Dragon Fang like huddle up around him and they just die together is so beautiful and sad, because Appa would do the same thing. And next up, chapter 7, The Runaway. This is like a weaker filler in this. Actually, you know what? I'm changing my mind a little bit. I think this might be low A tier. I don't think it's B tier because of a certain moment. So this episode is Toph doing a bunch of swindling of people, tricking them at like the marble game, bending the marble back under the cup so she wins, and a bunch of little things like that. And Katara being the mom of the group and being like, no, this is not okay, like tricking these people. And Toph and Katara at odds again. But then it ends in a very, very good, poignant moment with Toph and Sokka on top of the cliff and Katara underneath, not realizing that they're up there, talking about Katara, and Sokka saying that when their mom died, it was like the hardest time in his life. And every time he tries to picture his mom's face, he just pictures Katara because she's always been there for him. And again, gotta stop talking about this shit because it's too emotional. But yeah, I think that is beautiful. And Toph also being like, Katara maybe is right. Like, I feel guilty about leaving my parents. And they both just kind of talk highly of Katara, and she hears that and then goes and does a little swindling of her own with Toph, and it ends up getting them caught. And then there's an awesome fight with Combustion Man at the end of this episode too. So yeah, I think as a filler episode, it ends on a really good conversation between Sokka and Toph. And I always love seeing Toph's feet hanging off of things, because I feel like that means that she feels safe, because when she's planted a lot in the show because that's her only way to see. The only time she's not feet planted on the ground is when she's with her friends and having vulnerable conversations. Like, I feel like that's just her way of opening up, which is very cool. Yeah, I'd say it's low A for me. Chapter 8, which is The Puppet Master, which I'm going to put up here. I'm going to organize this after, but this is easily top 5 favorite episodes of the show. This is where Katara learns bloodbending. Hama as a character on her own is so fucking cool and interesting. Other characters in the show, like Jet, where like they're making the wrong decisions, but you can understand where they come from. Like, she was wronged for so long by the Fire Nation. They literally wiped out every other waterbender, and she was the last one. So she, fights back, but does it in the wrong way by imprisoning people who aren't really, like, she does imprison some soldiers, but she ends up imprisoning just Fire Nation, the people of the Fire Nation, which is not the best way to go about it. And this episode builds so well. Like, it starts with them telling scary stories around the campfire. So this episode's going to be a little bit more like horror themed. And then they meet Hama, and you think something's up with her. She, like, they play creepy music in the background. And then when they break into her house and like do their sleuthing to figure out what's going on, it ends up being that she just is a water bender from the same tribe as them. And so the tension is all like released from you. You relax and think that she's just going to be friendly from now on. And then it builds back up when they realize that they find these people there. I think the best moment where it builds back up is when she drains the life out of all of the flowers in that big like fucking black circle. Such a good moment. And you realize, okay, maybe she still is, something's going on. And then you realize she's been stealing all these people, and she teaches Katara how to drain the water out of life. And then before she teaches her bloodbending, Katara's like, yeah, that's not okay. You've been wrong. And she's like, you should have learned it first. And then she bloodbends Katara, and then bloodbends Aang and Sokka. And right before she forces Sokka to stab Aang with her sword, Katara bloodbends her back. And then she's just like, yeah, my work here is done. Like, I've passed on bloodbending. And Katara's just crying at the end of the episode because she doesn't want to bloodbend. She doesn't want to bring that evil into the world. Like, controlling someone else against their will is not Katara's game. But man, what a fucking good episode. That their fight under the moon and the trees, holy shit. And also seeing Hama's past, like in the prisons, like bloodbending the rats and learning how to do that. So much good world building. Didn't expect there to be something like this in the show, but goddamn, that is one of the best episodes. Came out of nowhere. Chapter 9, Nightmares and Daydreams. I love this episode. I think this episode's hilarious. This is where Aang just can't sleep because he's anxious about what we think is going to be the finale, where he fights during the comet. So he's preparing to fight Ozai, and he's not ready. Like, he doesn't even know how to firebend at this point, and he can't sleep. He keeps dreaming about fighting the Fire Lord and not having his pants on, and all this shit. It shows Aang's inner struggle really well. It also makes me very stressed for him. He's also like, he's just not sleeping day after day, trying to practice and failing. And then it also has the most amazing Appa and Momo fight in his dream. And it has Aang talking to Momo like he's a person doing like, and I think this episode's just hilarious. His dream sequences are just so well done. Like the collage one where it just shows Momo go like, shh, I fucking love it. It's very funny. Yeah, you didn't practice for your math test. It's very funny, but also like important. Like, he is clearly not ready and he's suffering, and everyone's trying to make him relax, and ends very nicely with his friends like making a bed for him and helping him finally get the rest that he needs. This is The Day of the Black Sun Part 1. First two-parter. Yeah, this is, come on. This is an easy S tier. There's no way this isn't S tier. Amazing battle where you get to see a bunch of your favorite people coming out. You get to see the boulder comes back. Same with the hippo, the two people from the Earthbending Arena. It has Aang shaving his head, which goosebumps. Like when he's just back to the Avatar sitting on the cliffside, back in his regular getup with his staff. Holy fuck, like such a good build up to like this huge fight. Sokka giving the battle plans. And it's a good character moment for Sokka too, because he thinks that not being a good public speaker means that he's not a good leader, but Aang just reassures him. He's like, your moment isn't going to be in front of some map. It's going to be out there on the battlefield. It's got the swamp boys coming back. It just like reincorporates them all for this big fight. And it's got Aang and Katara's first kiss. And it seems, Katara seemingly confused about it, but sort of happy as well. And so you're wondering what's going to happen there. But the whole fight is so good. The little earthbending tanks pushing him on the ground, swamp guy fucking stuff up. And it ends on a huge cliffhanger where Aang gets to the temple and Ozai's not there. Easy S tier. And then we'll move quickly on to the part 2 of that, chapter 11, which, as Kai mentions, Zuko standing up to Ozai is number 1 best moment of the whole show for me. It's up there for me. I think it's maybe top 5. My favorite moment is the tale of Iroh when he goes to the tree. But my second favorite moment is coming up, and I'll explain to you in a bit. But Zuko standing up to his dad is top 5 moments, I think, for me. It's hard, man. There's so many good moments in this show. But holy shit, yeah, this is definitely better of the 2 parts, just like the Siege of the North. I think both the part 2s are just absolutely better. This has them figuring out that there's an underground tunnel, meeting Azula, and Azula fucking with them and manipulating them as she does best, telling Sokka that, Suki, she has her imprisoned and getting him to get emotional and fight her. It has Toph being the most badass earthbender, outbending the Dai Li, and them chasing Azula and showcasing how strong Azula is. She can just, without even firing any fire, avoid all 3 of these tough warriors. And then, yeah, it has Zuko's confrontation with Ozai, which is like some of the best written dialogue and such a good moment. You don't even need a battle. That's what you needed between Zuko and Ozai. You never needed them to fight. You needed Zuko to tell his dad that he is crazy and Zuko's learned a lot from his uncle and on his own journey, and learned what's right. And being like, how can you justify a fight with a child? Like, it was cruel and wrong. And saying how Iroh's been like more of a father to him than Ozai ever has. And yeah, that's a great moment. And then it also has Iroh busting out of prison when Zuko tries to get there to free him. Iroh's already busted out, and he tells that lady, like, you should take the day off. You look a little ill. And I love that. Iroh fucking getting jacked in prison. Great fights, great set pieces, amazing dialogue between a bunch of the characters. Like, man, easy S tier. And then it has them end up losing this fight, and just the kids are the ones who make it out. But so does Zuko. And you see Zuko's trailing them on his air balloon, and he, basically at the end, tells Ozai that he's going to go join the Avatar, which is just like the most exciting thing in the whole show. Being like, finally. And then we get to the Western Air Temple, which is absolutely another S tier. It has Zuko's first meeting with the Aang gang. Amazing. I love whenever Zuko tries to be normal. He's just so awkward and adorable. Hello, Zuko here. And he's like trying to figure out how to talk to them. And he's like, why am I so bad at being good? And I just, yeah, I think this episode's great. Talking to himself, figuring out how he's going to approach the situation. And then he does, and it just goes so poorly. And then Toph tries to talk to him. He burns her feet on accident. Toph kind of being like, yeah, you know, we need a firebender. And one just walks up, and we're still saying no. And them kind of struggling, being like, well, he's wronged them so many times. And especially Katara, because she was the one to first connect with him. And then he turns around and gets Aang lightninged in the back. But it does end with them joining up, which is incredibly satisfying. And it also shows like the beginning of Zuko's journey here when he was first chasing the Avatar, and his regret for how he treated his uncle. And it has a final fight with Combustion Man, and Sokka straight up kills his ass. Very good episode. Chapter 13. Firebending Masters. S tier, no question. Definitely a high S tier as well. This has my top 5 favorite moments in the show with Zuko and Aang meeting the dragons. This whole episode is incredible. It has them like telling stories around the fire for the first little bit, and then Zuko's lost his stuff. He can't firebend. And so they go on a journey together to the first firebenders, the Sun Tribe. They get them to teach them the old ways of firebending, and they realize that there's actually dragons who are still alive. And you get some Iroh backstory as well, because Iroh apparently slayed the last dragon. But you find out by the end of the episode that no, because he's the best person in this whole universe, that he actually like protected them and saved these last 2 dragons. And this is also why you can see into the spirit world and stuff, because he took this journey. But yeah, seeing those 2 dragons and then having that moment where they're both like looking up and the colors are all surrounding them, and Zuko's just like, I understand now. Oh my God. Like the best still in the whole show, I think. Like if you were to take a still frame of the show, I think Zuko and Aang looking up into the flames is such a beautiful moment, and doing the dragon dance, and like this whole episode is so good, and get some good like Zuko and Aang connection, who they work really well together when they're on each other's side. Like I really like their banter. Boiling Rock Part 1. We got chapter 14. Classic prison break episode. I think this actually might be the only other A tier. I think Part 2 is S tier, but I'm going to put this in A tier. I love prison break episodes. Like, it is a trope, but it is a fun trope always. And this is a really good prison break episode, especially Sokka's always the one come up with good plans. And yeah, this is where kind of Zuko takes his little side adventures with everyone, except for Toph. Poor Toph. Takes a side adventure with Zuko and Sokka. And they go to the prison to try and rescue Sokka's dad. They realize he's not there, but Suki's there. So they make a plan to bust out. And you get to see the cool prison warden, who's much better than George Takei's character, who actually like will go down, do anything to not have anyone escape this prison. And you have probably the best line in the whole show when Sokka says, my girlfriend turned into the moon. And Zuko says, that's rough, buddy. That's like my favorite thing ever. Good start to the Boiling Rock. And very end of the episode, you see Sokka's dad step off of the gondola and him be there at the prison. So they're going to stay and try and rescue him and Suki. And then we have the Boiling Rock Part 2, which I think is low S tier. Just the culmination of the first episode and how they break out. And they try and use the little cooler to escape. And then Azula ends up there. And Zuko and May have a good conversation because Zuko kind of just left a letter for her and she's upset about that. And then I think the whole ending of this episode is great too, where they try and escape on the gondola. Azula tries to fuck him up. I think this is really good. She just like blasts off with her fire. She's so powerful. She really shows her cold-bloodedness in this, where she doesn't care that they're all going to fall into the water and die. And you can tell Ty Lee is kind of upset about that when they leave the trolley. May ends up helping Zuko escape because she loves Zuko. And as she says, she loves Zuko more than she fears Azula. And this is where Azula loses her friends. Ty Lee ends up stopping Azula from killing May, and then they both get captured, and she locks them away. And this is like her big turn to insanity, unfortunately for Azula. But yeah, it's got really good fights. Ty Lee and Suki fighting on top of the trolley. A little bit of Zuko and Azula fighting. Yeah, I like this episode a lot. I think it's S tier, especially for what it means to Azula. Like, this is a big loss for her, and then it kind of turns her character from here on out. Chapter 16, the Southern Raiders. This is one of my favorite episodes. In my top 3, has probably my second favorite moment in the whole show. This is the episode where Zuko and Katara take their side adventure, because Katara hasn't really warmed up to Zuko like everyone else, because she's been burnt by him before, and because she cares about Aang and doesn't want to see him get hurt by Zuko. But they go on an adventure because Zuko finds out who killed Katara's mom, and so they take this revenge quest to go and probably murder this guy. Aang tries to convince her before they leave that like, I hope you do the right thing when you get there, make the right decision, because violence is never the right option. And Zuko kind of dismisses it and is like, nah, like, you know, this is the real world and sometimes this is what you have to do. So Katara thinks she finds him on this warship and bloodbends the shit out of him, and it's such a big fucking moment. And I love Zuko's expressions this whole episode, because up until this point, like, he hasn't really seen Katara do that much waterbending. Like, he saw some stuff, and he saw when they fought at the end of part 1, book 1, saw like somewhat what she was capable of. But holy shit, like, him just looking in awe at like one of the most powerful waterbenders he's ever seen when she bloodbends this guy. And then this had like the most goosebumps I feel in the show is when Katara finally confronts the old retired guard who killed her mom. She tells a story about how he was looking for the last waterbender, and Katara's mom lied and said it was her when really it was Katara. The guy was just like, she lied? Then who was the last waterbender? And she's just like, me! And then freezes the rain in the air, and Zuko takes off his mask and just looks, and like, that is the most goosebumps I feel in this whole show. It's fucking incredible. And then she turns all of the rain into ice and goes to shoot all of the ice shards at him and freezes it right before she kills him, and ends up making the right decision, saying as much as she hates him, this is like not the way to go about it. And she returns, and Aang says it was the right thing to do as much as she wanted to do it. Yeah, violence isn't the answer, but I think that whole Katara side journey is beautiful. Definitely one of the best episodes, and that moment is fucking incredible. We got chapter 17. Ember Island players, S tier. No question. I think this is the best flashback episode that's ever been made. The fact that they turn the whole show into a play and kind of poke fun at their own show, poke fun at their own characters, but also all the characters are like seeing what other people think of them. It's not actually exactly what they're like, but they're seeing their insecurities like out in front of them. It's probably one of the funniest episodes. And yeah, they have to confront their own insecurities and how other people see them. And I think it's done really well. And yeah, Toph's character, where he's like this strong dude who screams, is great. Katara always crying and talking about hope. Sokka like going and telling his guy how to do his jokes better. Like, it's all super good. Zuko obviously just talking about honor. But yeah, it also like, it's hilarious, but it also has, you know, them like some introspection for all of them. And Zuko like being upset about how he's treated his uncle. It ends with the Fire Lord just destroying Aang and Zuko and them losing. And now we're on to the 4-part finale. And I'll just move all of these into here. I'll figure out the order after, but we'll start with Sozin's Comet part 1. Again, I feel like all of the 2-parter, 3-parter, 4-parters, they all just get better and better. Like, part 1 is usually, I mean, it has to be it's the build up kind of sets the tone for the rest of the parts. But I think part 1 is probably the weakest again in this one. Has Zuko like attacking Aang, being like, you have to train fire bending, like you barely know anything, and then being like, well, we're just kind of wait until the comet passes. And then Zuko's like, no, you have to do it now because he's going to burn all of these people. And then them being like, oh crap. So then they end up training, and then Aang walks into the water and they can't find him and he's disappeared. And so they use June and her rat thing to try and track him, and he's like, yeah, he doesn't exist. He's not on this plane of reality. I think that's actually maybe is top A tier, because there's not a lot that goes down in this one. It's setting stuff up again, but it's necessary. You need an episode like that to set up what's about to come. And then we get into part 2, which is Aang talking to a giant lion turtle. One sec. Zuko wants to go up. The rest of the gang meets all the White Lotus members, and this is where Zuko reunites with Iroh for the first time, and holy shit, oh, what a good moment. Also one of my favorite moments in the whole show. And Aang goes on a spiritual journey talking to all of the other avatars to figure out how he can go about fighting Ozai without killing him. And they basically all tell him, you got to kill him. They do so in a way where it's like, they don't explicitly say it. They're just saying that you have to do it in a way that like protects the world. Like, the world's got to come first. You're the avatar. You're Aang second to being the avatar. So your morals aren't as important as being the avatar and doing the greater good. And in this case, it seems like that would be killing Ozai. Aang's whole character is his self-identity versus his identity as the avatar and his struggle with that. And this is him learning that his duty as the Avatar has to come first, but he doesn't want it to. He wants to figure out a way where he was taught as an air nomad that all life is sacred, and he doesn't want to end someone's life. Like, if he does that, where does he draw the line? Yeah, he's told that that's the way it's got to be. But then the lion turtle, and I think this is also very misinterpreted. A lot of people think the lion turtle just gives him the ability to energy bend, but he already knows how to energy bend. I think the lion turtle helps heal his chakra, unlock his chakra, because in the next part, or part 4, the chakra is, I think, clearly unlocked because when he gets hit in the back by that stone, he enters the Avatar state, because you enter the Avatar state when your life is in danger or someone you care about is in danger, and his life is definitely in danger when it hits like his sore spot. And so I think the lion turtle just helps him unlock his chakra. It doesn't teach him how to energy bend. He already knew how to energy bend. He did it at the swamp, and energy bending clearly has existed and sort of was taught by Guru Patik to him as well. So yeah, the lion turtle touches him, heals his chakra, and then Aang moves on, and you get to see the rest of the gang with Iroh, and then being like, we're gonna go take over the Earth Kingdom, and Iroh be like, I know my destiny now is to take back the Earth Kingdom for the Earth Kingdom people and not to have taken it for the Fire Nation. So they're going to do that, and they're all kind of basically deciding what their destiny is in this fight. And Zuko and Katara decide they're going to fight Azula together, and the rest of the gang is going to help stop the rest of the airships so Aang can focus on fighting Ozai. And yeah, it's just another build-up episode, but this one has a lot more important than the last one, and a lot more interesting things happen. So this is an S tier for sure. And then the last two are like definite high S tiers. So this is part 3 now, Sozin's Comet. I think the fight with Azula is the coolest thing I've ever seen, the best fight in any show I've ever seen. It's incredible. And I think the dichotomy between that fight and Ozai and Aang's fight is incredible. Like, Ozai and Aang's fight is very pulled back. It's not as intimate. It's not about Aang versus Ozai. It's more about Aang's inner struggle to not kill Ozai. And so the first half of the fight is Aang running away from Ozai, kind of getting bodied by him because he doesn't want to kill him. So he's the one on the on the defensive, being passive. Once he enters the Avatar state, it's still an inner struggle, but it's the Avatar chasing Ozai down, trying to kill him. And so the tension in that fight doesn't come from Aang versus Ozai. It comes from Aang versus the Avatar. It's like his inner struggle, and which one will win out? Will the Avatar kill Ozai, or will Aang figure out a way to have him not killed? And yeah, I don't think this part quite gets to him entering the Avatar state. It doesn't. It gets to him like shutting off in the shell, trying to figure out what to do before he enters the Avatar state. But it does have him redirect the lightning. He's about to aim it at Ozai, aims it off to the side, because he doesn't want to kill him. But it does have the beginning of Zuko and Azula's fight right up until she tries to blast Katara, and Zuko stops it. And I think that fight is just the best fight in the show, and best fight in any show I've ever seen. The fact that the music for Aang versus Ozai is very bombastic, very like final encounter. And then the music for Zuko and Azula is like very somber and like melancholic, because it's not a good fight. Like, Zuko is seeing his sister completely having a mental breakdown and has gone completely insane, and he's not happy to be doing this. It's just it's a very tragic fight, brother versus sister. And in the end, like, he loves her and grew up with her and has these memories, and he's seeing her unfortunately have been twisted by their dad and go down the wrong path. And it also, like, the beginning of it has Azula like actually having like a manic episode and having visions of her mom in the mirror and turning away all of her friends, cutting her hair. Like, definitely think she has a like psychosis at least. And it's kind of sad. Like, this is the first episode where with Azula, like, I was just like, man, this is just really, really sad. It doesn't make me feel good to be watching a person go through this. But yeah, this is also the episode that just beautiful culmination of what a good power creep looks like in a show. Like, if you reflect back to the first couple episodes and see where what abilities the characters were at, and then see Ozai blasting flames like across the whole field that's like football fields wide, and then him and Aang fighting and picking up mountains and throwing them at each other is just incredible. And same with Zuko and Azula's fight, just very grandiose. And then yeah, that gets us to the final episode of the show, where those two fights finish up, Zuko has been struck by the lightning, and Katara's job now to fight Azula, and their fight is just as incredible. And she just outsmarts her, the whole trapping them both in the ice and then melting her way out and locking her up. Zuko and Katara just like looking over Azula, like crying and manically flailing on the floor, and they're just looking in like, not like, again, Katara like looks away because it's like so troubling to watch this person go through this. They're not happy to have just beaten her. It's not like a everyone cheering moment. It's like, damn, this is what happens when you completely lose it, and it's not fun, which I think is so cool to see, because most fights are end and you're just like, you want to pump your fist, but that one you're just like stressful. Aang entering the Avatar state and fucking just clapping Ozai this whole episode, talking with all the Avatar voices, being like, you and your forefathers have betrayed the land. It's like, holy shit, Aang's gone crazy. Locks him up and then finally figures out a way to energy bend and take his powers instead of kill him, and it's just great. Best of both worlds. He got to be the Avatar and save the world and do what was right for the greater good, but also stay true to him as Aang and his morals. I think that was the perfect conclusion for this show. And then you just get like everyone at the end, kind of like a Lord of the Rings ending where the whole town is there bowing to Aang and cheering. Aang and Zuko being friends, which is just great to see. I do wish, I know there's a comic that has Zuko meeting his mom, but I really wish they ended the show with Zuko meeting his mom. He goes to Ozai in the prison and asks where his mom is, and there is a graphic novel that's canon where he gets to meet his mom. But I wish that was a part of the show. I wish he got to see her in the show. But it's just a great ending. Aang and Katara kiss and are together. Zuko and Mei are together, and everyone you love is there in the Fire Nation at the end to greet Zuko as the new Fire Lord, and it's just a great ending with great fights. And I love this show. And now I'm going to quickly just organize these a little better to wrap it up here. Yeah, this looks pretty good. I'm happy with this. Some of these might move around a little bit, but this is my final Avatar tier list. Favorite episode of all time, Tales of Ba Sing Se, Puppet Master, Southern Raiders, top 3. And then we've got a lot of the big finales, Sozin's Comet, and then we've got Siege of the North, The Storm. End of part 2 is a little bit lower of book 2. But still incredible, but just not quite as grandiose as these. It's big for a Zuko moment, but I think there's better Zuko moments. I think The Storm, Zuko alone, just a little bit above there, and the beach. But yeah, this is my Avatar episode tier list, chapter tier list. Tell me what you think, and that's it. I'll see you later.